Alright, hello 7th grade. So today we are looking at a few more adding and subtracting mixed numbers. So we got started on this yesterday, got most of the way through it. A couple things we didn't talk about. I want to run through a few more of these before I set you loose on the homework. So if we're adding these, quick refresher, a couple of different ways to do this. I can talk today. So one thing we can do is we can look at the numbers on the outside and we can add those. So 4 plus 2 gets you 6. 3 plus 4 gets you 7. And now I got 6 and 7 11ths. So ones that are nice like this, that are already, common denominators, we're not going to get anything bigger than 1 in our fraction. We're not going to get an improper fraction inside our mixed number. These ones are kind of nice. The other thing you could do is you could turn this into an improper fraction here. So 4 times 11 gives you 44, plus another 3 gives you 47. 2 times 11 is 22, plus 4 gets you 26. And then 47 plus 26 gets you 73. And if you leave it like that, that's fine. If you mix and numberify that back into 6 and 7 11ths, that would also be okay. So either one's okay there. So mixed numbers are okay, improper fractions are okay. We just don't want to end up with an improper fraction inside of our mixed number, which is why this is sometimes going to be nicer than this. Okay, same sort of thing with subtracting. So as long as our number here is bigger than our number here, we can just do the same thing where we're looking at the outside numbers and going 8 minus 2 is 6, 4 minus 3 is 1, and we can do it like that. The other thing we could do is we could, again, turn these into improper fractions. So again, outside number times bottom plus your top, 8 times 5 is 40, plus 4 gets you 44, over 5. Minus 2 times 5 is 10, 10 plus 3 is 13. And 44 minus 13 is 31. And if you left that as 31 fifths, that's okay. If you mix numberify that back into 6 and 1/5, that's okay. All right, now again, where this got a little bit trickier and where it might be nice to turn these into improper fractions rather than trying to deal with them like this is something like this. Because 7 minus 4 is 3, but 3 minus 9 is, that's a negative 6. Now I got a negative inside of our mixed number. We don't want to do that. So these ones are where you probably want to go ahead and just turn these into improper fractions. So 7 times 10 gets you 70. 70 plus 3 gets you 73 over 10. Minus 4 times 10 is 40. 40 plus 9 is 49. And 73 minus 49 gets you 24, I believe. Okay. And if you want to leave it as an improper fraction, that's okay, but we do want to reduce that. So what goes into both 24 and 10? Hopefully you said 2. So 2 goes into 24 12 times. 2 goes into 10 5 times. So you can either leave that like that, or if you mix numberify that back into 2 and 2/5, that would also be okay. So again, if you want to turn an improper fraction back into a mixed number, we're looking for how many times does 5 go into 12? 5 goes into 12 twice, so that's this 2. And then we have 2 left over, because 2 times 5 is 10. Now, again, if that's where we're getting a little off, feel free to leave that as an improper fraction. That's perfectly fine. And in fact, the further we get into algebra, the more and more you're going to want this anyway, so it's perfectly fine if you leave that. But we do want to go ahead and reduce that. Okay, same sort of thing here. Just watch out for, we don't have common denominators this time. So if we don't have common denominators, you can either go ahead and get your common denominator before or after we turn those into improper fractions. I'm going to go ahead and do it after this time. So we got 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5, so this is 5 halves now. Plus 4 times 4 is 16, 16 plus 3 is 19. And now we're going to go ahead and get a common denominator. So a good common denominator for 2 and 4 is the 4 we've already got. Now, if you happen to use 8, because 2 times 4 gives you 8, that's fine. You're just going to end up having to reduce it at the end. So if we take this 1 times 2, 5 times 2 is 10. 2 times 2 is 4. So the big thing there is just remember that that's a thing we need to do. So if we don't have common denominators, we do need to get them before we add. So we don't want to add this 5 and this 19, we want to get common denominators first. So now we've got 10 plus 19 gives you 29. And if you left it as 29 over 4, that's okay. If you turn that back into a mixed number and said, okay, well, 4 goes into 29 7 times, because 7 times 4 gets you 28, and then 1 more is left, that would also be okay. So either this or this, either one's fine. Okay, now the thing that we didn't quite get a chance to talk about yesterday because we ran out of time a little bit there is what if one of our things isn't a fraction or a mixed number? What if it's just a number? So if that's just a number, we're still going to need a common denominator in order to add that. Now, if we're just adding, we could go 9 plus 4 again is 13 and call that 13 and 2 fifths. As long as we're just adding. So we're just adding, we can just add those numbers out there and we're good to go. If we're subtracting, that's probably where we're going to need a common denominator. Because if we're subtracting these, well, 5 minus 2 is 3, but then what do we do with that 1/5? So this is where we're probably going to want to turn these into improper fractions. So I'm going to call this 5 over 1 for starters. And then 2 times 3 is 6. 6 plus 1 is 7. And then if we want a common denominator, 3 sounds like a good idea. So if we want to turn that into a 3, we're just taking this one times 3. 5 times 3 is 15. 3 times 1 is 3. And then minus 7 over 3. And 15 minus 7 is 8. And this would be okay. Or if you turn that back into 2 2/3, that would also be okay. Now, that's one way to do that. The other thing you could do is we could say that instead of 5, we're going to call that 4 plus 1. Why? Because then we can take that 1 and we can turn it into 3/3. So now we got 4 3/3 minus 2 1/3. And 4 minus 2 is 2. 3 minus 1 is 2. And that'll get you right to this. So that's another way to do that. So 2 different ways we can do that. All right. Let's try one more of those. Oh, oops. Okay, let's do another one of those. So let's say you get 8 minus 2 1/5. So I'm going to call that 8 over 1. And 2 times 5 is 10. 10 plus 1 is 11. And that goes over 5. Okay, and again, common denominator. So a good common denominator for 1 and 5 is 5 sounds good. So we're going to take this 1 times 5. 8 times 5 is 40. And 40 minus 11 is 29. And you can either leave that like that, or if you mix number 5 that back into 5 4/5, that would also be okay. So again, 5 goes into 29 5 times, because 5 times 5 is 25, and then to get from 25 to 29, that's 4. But again, if that's where we're getting a bit lost, feel free to just leave it like this. This is perfectly fine. All right, now, one more thing. Word problems. So we got a tank. And our tank holds 11.5 gallons of gas. And right now it has 7 3/4 in it. And we want to know how many more gallons we need to fill it. So if our tank holds 11.5, you can draw a little picture. And right now it's here at 7 3/4. What do we want to do with those in order to find what's left? Hopefully you said you want to subtract. So if we want to figure out how much is left here, how much we need to fill to get it up to here, we're taking our 11.5 minus our 7 3/4. So again, we want to turn these into improper fractions. So 11 times 2 is 22, plus that 1 is 23. 7 times 4 is 28. plus 3 gives you 31. And then we're going to take that and we're going to find some common denominators. So 2 times 2 would get us up to 4. Oops, times 2, not times 4. We want to get to 4. So we're taking this one times 2. 23 times 2 gets you to 46. And we got 31. And 46 minus 31 gets you 50 over 4. And this is an instance where you might want to actually turn that back into a mixed number, because if we say we want 15/4 of a gallon of gas, what is that? That's probably going to make more sense in a word problem if we take that and turn it back into 4 goes into 15 3 times. 4 times 3 is 12, so 3 left over. So 3 3/4 gallons of gas makes a bit more sense intuitively than 15/4 of a gallon. I don't know what 15/4 of a gallon is, but I know what 3 3/4 of a gallon is. So word problems are the case where you might want to turn it back into a mixed number. So I mean, this wouldn't be wrong, but as far as a word problem, this makes more sense. Especially if we're looking back at our answer and going, does this answer make sense? It's probably going to be easier to figure out whether this makes sense than whether this makes sense. So if we're looking back here and saying, okay, well, if we're getting from 7 3/4 up to 11.5, yeah, 3 3/4 were in the right ballpark. Whereas if you left it like this, that you might not know, is that a reasonable answer to get? So word problems are one case where you might want to turn it back into a mixed number just to double check, does that answer make sense? All right, so that is it as far as adding and subtracting mixed numbers go. The homework should have already posted on Google Classroom because I think it posted yesterday. So that's going to be due on Monday. And since we're not back on Monday yet, just go ahead and either screenshot that, take a picture of that, and then just send me an email of that rather than waiting until we're back in school to hand me that piece of paper physically. All right, so I will see you in the next video.